Thank you guys for joining me here for this last segment on today's show. And with all the head coaching talk and all the rumors and reported links to the Ben Johnsons of the world, the Aaron Glenns, and the Mike Vrabels, Las Vegas also just got rid of their head coach Antonio Pierce, and Las Vegas is going to be super interesting to follow, I think, over this offseason and how and who gets that head coaching position over there with the Raiders, especially because we now know that Tom Brady is supposedly going to have a pretty big role in determining who that head coach is going to be. He's going to be a pretty loud voice in, the Raiders' ear to kind of sway them or influence who they get in as a head coach, right? That's the kind of benefit that you have with bringing him in as a minority owner for the team and part of the support team for owner Mark Davis. So, I don't have a problem with that. Some people might, but I think why not have the best quarterback of all time kind of give you some insight as to who to hire as your new head coach? I think that's a great idea. But already it was off to a pretty crazy start, honestly, because as soon as we heard, one report, one story about Tom Brady being involved with helping them find a new head coach, then we get this report from the NFL Network's Tom Pelissero, who reported that Tom Brady had actually been in contact with his former head coach, Bill Belichick, about any interest from Bill for this Raiders job, right? If there was any way, with Tom kind of reaching out to kind of gauge Bill Belichick's interest in returning to the NFL already without having even coached or even sniffed what it's like being a college head coach, right? Already we're getting these links back to the NFL, right? The irony in that. But that was a report from Tom Pelissero, and we got that obviously after Antonio Pierce was fired already this week, and right away there's these reports linking Bill Belichick to the head coaching job with the Las Vegas Raiders. And also, sources say that at least one other NFL team has reached out to Bill Belichick to kind of just check in and see if he has any interest in returning possibly. But the Athletic actually reported that Bill Belichick, as of right now, has no plans to return to the NFL, and they quoted that his sole focus is on coaching and recruiting as of right now. So, according to them, Bill Belichick is going to honor his commitment to the University of North Carolina. He isn't really thinking of really ditching them and going back to the NFL after it was kind of made a big deal where Bill Belichick was upset with the NFL and how nobody was kind of reaching out to him. So he decided, to say, forget you guys. I'm going to go to college and coach over here. And now, of course, now teams want him, right? It always ends up being the case. But, Bill Belichick did sign a 5-year deal at UNC. So it would be kind of what's the word I'm looking for? It would just be really rough, for a lack of a better term, on UNC to kind of hire Bill Belichick, be all excited about this, all the projections and predictions already for Bill next year in college football, just for him to go back to the NFL. I think that would be pretty harsh for UNC, but especially with this 5-year deal, it makes it a lot more, I guess, tricky to kind of just get out of it. But the biggest kind of caveat in all of it is the fact that there is a $10 million buyout clause in this contract if Bill Belichick decides to leave before June 1st. So that's kind of like the loophole in it all, right? That's the only way that Bill Belichick can just kind of say, you know what, I actually still want to be in the NFL. Sorry, UNC, I'm going to go back to the NFL. This $10 million buyout clause would have to be paid, and then Bill Belichick would just be pretty much be free to go join that NFL team, right? And you might think that that's not a big deal, but I think I heard J.J. Watt say something like recently about these links with Bill Belichick and returning to the NFL. He said something like, you don't have a clause in that contract unless you're not even like remotely thinking about a way to kind of use it, right? I'm not saying that he's planning on using it, but you don't include anything like that unless there's not at least like a 3% chance that it could end up being useful for you, right? If you really don't have the NFL in mind or anything like that, then don't include the clause at all because you're not going to change your mind. But the fact that it's in there, there's a little bit like maybe, like it could be there. Let's just have it there in case, right? I'm not looking at it, but just in case, right? That's kind of essentially what that is. So, I mean, the Athletic are saying that he's not really interested right now, and I think it's quite honestly pretty early to kind of get a gauge of how convincing the Raiders can be to try and pry Bill Belichick away from UNC. So that's one hypothetical, right? Then we get to the other one in Deion Sanders. And Deion Sanders has been linked to the NFL a good amount of times already through this, second portion of the season. And Deion Sanders actually appeared on Good Morning America, I think yesterday, if not a little bit before that. And he was asked about the possibility of coaching in the NFL and kind of like what it would take for him to make that move, right? Like what would have to happen. And Deion Sanders said, the only way I would consider is to coach my sons, not sons in the NFL. So pretty much saying that he would have, not that he would have to go to the NFL, but he would strongly consider going to the NFL if he had the opportunity to again coach both of his sons, Shiloh and Shedeur Sanders, like he did at Colorado. And it's interesting because before, when Deion was asked about it, he was all about Colorado. He was all about loving it there, wanting to stay there. And, I mean, to be fair, he is still saying that, but now I never heard anything before about him kind of being open to the possibility of coaching his sons, right? Before, it was mainly about Colorado, right? Like his sons are moving on to the NFL. That's awesome. He's proud of them, but he never really like kind of gave an answer to that question, right? It was always just, I'm happy to be here in Colorado. Now, because of the question, we kind of got an insight as to what it would at least take for Deion to make the move over to the NFL. And isn't it interesting how that door has been opened just a little bit at the same time that Antonio Pierce was fired? And now today, we got news that the general manager for the Raiders, now former general manager for the Raiders, Tom Telesco, was actually fired today from the Raiders. The Raiders let him know of that today, and now the Raiders are looking for a new general manager and a new head coach. And also, coincidentally, the Raiders have the 6th pick in this year's draft. And if you want to talk about an opportunity to be in the running for Shedeur Sanders, I mean, the Raiders have a decent chance at it, at least more than they did for any quarterback last year, right? Because they were picking 13 last year. Now they're in the top 6. And there's a couple teams up there that maybe you could gauge their interest for a trade. And, I mean, depending what the Raiders' situation is with Deion and how much they want him to be their head coach, now we got this situation with Deion and Bill Belichick here in this most likely to scenario where I kind of laid out everything that has been played out, right? And to make a decision on what's most likely to happen based on the fact that the Raiders have fired Antonio Pierce, they just fired Tom Telesco, they don't really have too many interviews lined up as of yet. I mean, they have a couple with Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, and Steve Spagnuolo, but that's pretty much it, and I'm sure that they're going to need a lot more than that. And where they are in the draft makes me kind of go to this place where these scenarios I don't think are so crazy, right? Because we have the $10 million clause for Bill Belichick in his contract already, his connections to Tom Brady, and also with Bill Belichick, there has been those reports, I guess you could say, how teams in the NFL didn't want to bring Bill Belichick on because they didn't want to give up that much control to Bill. And isn't it kind of funny now how the Raiders are in a position to hire not just a coach, but a general manager, 2 spots that Bill Belichick held in New England all those years, right? So if you couldn't already tell, I think out of these two guys to be the next coach of the Raiders, I think Bill Belichick is more likely to do it than Deion Sanders. Because Deion, there's that appeal of the draft, and if the Raiders were to trade up with like the Giants or like the Cleveland Browns or something like that, right? If they were able to trade up and be up there, then it starts to get a little bit more serious for Deion Sanders, right? Because in that respect, you could go up, trade up, get Shador, and then realistically draft Shiloh in one of the later rounds, right? After the first round. So you could do something like that, but I think that's a lot of ifs and maybes to kind of happen. Right now, you're looking at this Raiders team that has the connection with Tom Brady, has all the willingness, I'm sure, to hand over all the power to Bill Belichick, right? You have the general manager position open, you have the head coaching position open, something that Bill Belichick is very accustomed to, and with an owner like Mark Davis, to me, gives off the impression that he's just there to facilitate everything for the general manager and the head coach. He really gives a lot of trust to those guys, and I'm sure he wouldn't have any problem relinquishing that trust over to a guy like Bill Belichick. So in this scenario, I think actually Bill Belichick would be the most likely one to end up as the Raiders head coach, and that division would be something, right? If you had Bill Belichick, Sean Payton, Andy Reid, and Jim Harbaugh all competing for that division would certainly be awesome to watch, and I would love to see that. But this process is definitely going to be one of the more longer, drawn-out ones, I'm guessing, because of these, hypothetical situations. I don't think it's so far out of the realm that they're just going to completely disregard it. I think there's a possibility where one of them are seriously in the running for that job. Not in January, not in February, maybe not even in early March. But as you go through this process, I think one of them is going to be seriously considered to be the head coach. I just don't know who yet, but I think it's going to be Bill Belichick, most likely, than Deion Sanders. But let me know what you guys think about that sort of hypothetical that I just threw out you guys. So with that being the case, that is everything we have for today's show. I want to thank you guys for joining me on today's episode, and a reminder to have you guys like, follow, and subscribe to the network, as well as the Chip Shot Football podcast, and follow the network on all forms of social media as well. And also, if you want to catch more of the Chip Shot Football podcast, go on YouTube and check out the Sports Network channel and the GSMC Podcast Network channel, where there's more coverage around the NFL with me, Manny Maradiaga, as your host. There's more breaking news, reviews, previews, and just a bunch of discussion points on there for you guys to go and check out. But for right now, I'm signing off. I'll see you guys tomorrow back here again to close out the week and talk a little bit more of the upcoming playoff card that we have coming up this weekend.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to